Solved by Design with our other organizers and supporters. We heartily welcome you
Thank you.
to the symposium today. We are eagerly waiting for your speech as well. We had a wonderful opening session with the music team, and then we had Elizabeth join us, who is the founder of World Usability Day. And
Yeah.
now we have Paul Sandeep. Let me introduce Paul to the entire attendees today. And it's wonderful to know that Paul is the chief industrial designer and founder of Paul Studio. The company has the pride of designing more than 700 products. Paul is a TEDx speaker, a Red Dot winner, and an innovation expert. I would love to welcome him on behalf of Solved by Design and our other organizers and supporters. And Paul is sharing with us a familiar surprise. Welcome, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome, and it's really nice to be online with like-minded people. And I'm sure you guys have had an interesting conversation because I just joined in a couple of minutes back, and I was kind of also enjoying the conversation which you were having with Elizabeth regarding how you're actually dealing with the pandemic, and that the meal online thing was really funny. It's kind of that's real time situation. That is true. That is true. Okay, so well, I just figured out a couple of slides which I thought because most of my work is actually very visual in nature. So I thought having a few couple of slides might help portray my thoughts, which I'm going to share with you. So familiar surprise. Well, that's the topic I chose to talk today because that's something which kind of intrigues me. That and most of us are mostly when we talk about product design, and well, I come from a space where we design physical products and not much of digital products. So I'll be talking mostly about the physical manifestation of the ideas. And let me just show you an example, show you an image, and then let's start delving into the thought process. Now, if you see the screen, on the screen you'll see a very mundane and a regular image. A cloth line with some clothes hanging, drying out in the sun, and then you see these cloth pegs, which are very regular and mundane, which we use to dry our clothes, right? What I'm going to talk about is actually habituation. Habituation is something which actually stops us from thinking of it as a problem while it is. If I get back to the slide again, now if I ask you, do you actually see any problem here? Most of us wouldn't see any problem out here because this is what we are habituated to using cloth clips the way they are being shown in the image right now. But when we actually look deeper, there are certain problems which were identified. For example, if you look closely, there's a metal spring on the cloth pegs, and these metal springs tend to leave rust marks on your clothes over a period of time. And also, these plastic pegs tend to break off, they get brittle out in the sun and they tend to break off. So, what was the idea here? The idea here was to create something which had the familiarity of a clip, but the surprise was that it had no mechanism. It had actually no metal spring attached to it. So we could still achieve the basic functionality of a clip of a cloth lined peg, and yet do away with the metallic spring, so that now one is the recyclability becomes easier, and also the life of the product has increased many folds because even if one jaw breaks up, the other jaw is still functional. So this is what I try to feel is that why these kind of concepts are appreciated is because there's a certain amount of familiarity with the product, yet there's an element of surprise. Moving on to the next product. Now again, if you see, this is a regular multi-plug and a two-pin plug. Probably most of us wouldn't even notice a problem with it unless you have a really loose two-pin plug and you have this nagging problem of it falling off, right? So what is the problem here? The problem here is actually the two-pin plug gets loose and it falls off. But how do we solve this? Because there are n number of types of two-pin plugs and you really can't control the quality of the plugs and they tend to fall off because they become loose. So what's happening here is that due to gravity, it is falling off because it is flat on the surface. A very simple idea here. By adding an angle of 40 degrees to the base, we could create a gravity lock. And thus, the plugs will never fall off. They would tend to be locked due to gravity. And this created a new category of a product. And again, the surprise element here was that it worked similar to a regular plug, but then it had that element of surprise that okay, there was a interesting angle to it which actually solved the purpose without making it noticeable. How simply you can solve certain problems. And subsequently, over the past couple of years, it has stood as the rank one, seller on Amazon India in the electrical goods category. So why am I actually showing you these kind of examples? What I'm trying to emphasize here is that these kind of ideas come from insights, right? And these are insights which are coming from observations. But when we talk about artificial intelligence, probably it's more of data driven, right? So it's a situation where it's insight versus data. And when we talk about data, most often than not, we are kind of bombarded with a lot of quantitative data, numerical data, which gives us a very generalized opinion of certain things. Okay, let's do a survey and let's get an opinion, and then you get numbers. You don't see faces, but you see numbers in terms of the research output. Now, an example here is that this was a research done and it came out that 80% of Indians prefer to wall mount their LED or LCD TV. Okay. Now this was done through a pan India survey, and a lot of people were asked these questions, and it was a quantitative research which was conducted. And the output was that 80% of people, and as it is shown in the image, even though the televisions are lined on the bottom on the but the man standing here is still interested in watching something which is on the wall, which is an iconic image, because this is how we perceive a modern age television, that it has to be on the wall, right? But this data did not tell us another aspect of it, which was very interesting, and which we derived from something as a qualitative, because when we talk about qualitative data, we talk about the genuine needs, and genuine needs are seldom spelled; they are often to be felt. And how do you do that? That's mostly done by observation and empathy. Using these two as key tools to understand. So we definitely had the data that 80% of the Indians prefer wall mountable LED TV, but what the data did not tell us was that what happened to the stand of the television, which was not being used anymore. So suddenly, when the television goes up on the wall, the stand on the television has no purpose. So I kind of thought that, can I do something in finding purpose? Can we find a purpose for this stand which has no use once the TV is wall mounted? And this is what I came across during several home visits which I had done across the country, that people were using these kind of trays to keep their DTH boxes. Now this was a very interesting insight. Again, now this did not come through any data. This was on-site observation that people are using these kind of glass shelves to keep their DTH box. And what came out from the research was that even though the TV was wall mounted, but the DTH boxes had still to be placed somewhere. When we had these cabinets where the televisions, the color televisions, the big and bold ones were kept, you had the furniture piece which could house the DTH box and the remote. But now with your television going up on the wall, you actually have no space to keep those DTH boxes and remotes and all. So that's why you could see people keeping the remote DTH boxes at several locations. The right image shows someone has placed it on top of a television, which is very risky. It might fall off and cause an accident, and it definitely doesn't create a good picture. So this is what I was struck with an idea that, can I convert the stand into a tray? Now, since the television is on the wall, can the stand be converted into a tray which could have the DTH box and the remote space for this? For example, like this. And it took us almost 6 months to actually design the stand in such a manner that it could seamlessly be converted into a tray. And it was launched as Transform TV It was designed for LG Electronics. So again, we tried to keep the familiarity of the product. We did not do away with a very strange looking stand. Instead, we tried to keep it very normal, and so that people would have ready acceptance to this and still be surprised by the utility it has to offer. Again, talking about familiar surprise. So while I was talking about the insights and how the data was also being helpful in kind of getting some triggers for this, definitely we can't deny the fact that all of this was work of the creative intelligence, which as designers we all possess. And as designers, we use creative intelligence, which is nothing but about connecting the disconnected. Let's see an example like this. You're wanting to enjoy a drink and you want a couple of ice cubes and you're struggling with it, right? If you see this guy, he's struggling with the ice tray to bring out the ice cubes. So if you look closer, what actually again is the problem or the symptom over here? If you see, he's trying to twist and turn to bring out the ice. We all would have faced these kind of situations, and to be really question that why this happens. Any amount of data will not give you an answer to this, but only by observation can you really figure it out. So what we figured out was that the problem was actually not because of the tray. It was because of the shape of the ice. The ice here, as we call it an ice cube, is actually when water freezes up, it expands and the cube gets stuck on all the sides. And that is why you need to twist and turn to bring out the ice cubes. So, people have gone to great extents to complicate stuff. You see these kind of twisting mechanisms and all of that, but this is making things more complicated instead of this is actually trying to solve the problem of the tray, but we chose a different path and we thought, let's design the ice itself. So we came up with a drop shaped ice, which could easily be scooped off because there was this simple principles of physics that when ice would expand and is hemispherical in nature, this would pop up and it doesn't get stuck. So at the end of the day, you have a beautiful looking ice drop and which you can enjoy with your drink. So we can solve problems creatively with our creative intelligence, where I see there's any amount of data crunching wouldn't have given us this kind of an idea to solve a problem so simply with voluntary simplicity. So the question is, can we actually combine artificial intelligence, which is more about the data and the analysis of data and the fact finding with our creative intelligence? Well, definitely, probably in the future, more of this has to happen, and we can definitely see a glimpse of it. So the question arises here that, well, can AI be actually trained by creative intelligence? And one of the most beautiful examples which I would like to share with you is a chair which is designed by Philip Stark in collaboration with Autodesk, and they did this through a software simulation where the software was actually trained by the designer, and it was actually trained in terms of the aesthetic preferences of the designer, and eventually the objective was to create a chair which would use the minimum amount of energy to produce and the minimum amount of material to create the structural stability. So this is a very classic example where data-driven design is actually creating something really very iconic. But then the question here is that, as I said, can AI be trained by creative intelligence? Because definitely, although it is designed by data, you can also find the finer nuances of the expression of the designer here. So given this task to rather a designer with who's not an expert chair designer, probably will that data help to create another beautiful chair? So that is again a question to be asked. Well, most often the products which are designed or found out in the market or do well in the market are user-centered. And when we talk about user-centered, most often it means consumer-centered, as most of the products and services are aimed at luring the buyer. But I think there is a shift. There is a shift which needs to happen, and the shift is to happen to human-centered design, where it should be designed for everyone. It is to design with empathy. and designed for everyone involved in the experience of using a product, and not just the buyer who's actually paying for it. Now, this is a situation which, well, during the pandemic, our geyser conked off, and we had to call the service engineer. And this is a real-time situation where, the guy is struggling to just figure out the control panel of the geyser, which is mounted over there. The question again arises here is that can AI find a solution to this? I'm sure if we really think beyond the obvious, and we will be able to create solutions for these kind of real-time situations as well. Well, that's some thoughts from my end. Maybe I would like to also interact with you people and see what you have as triggers and what your thought processes are in terms of the trigger which I tried to share with you in terms of how data and insight can be merged together and created to create interesting products.
Wow, that was wonderful insights from you, Paul. I have to say that we are not wrong at all when we called you an innovation expert. Some takeaways from your speech, I think it would be how important is observation for insights and innovation, especially with all the wonderful product redesigns, if I may call it,
Absolutely.
for mundane objects. And also the importance of qualitative research as opposed to, just data collection. And
Yeah.
you gave us a message that no amount of data crunching can by itself help us come up with better usable designs. And
Yes.
yeah, you threw up a very good challenge as to how AI and the data that it collects can be trained to create better products. Very thoughtful and very insightful presentation. I'm sure all of us loved it, and kind of opened up our thinking as to how to how AI and the human centered AI can help us in coming up with wonderful innovations. Yeah,
Sure.
I'm sure all of us are feeling like how I felt. Please drop in questions, unmute yourself, and ask. Have a nice chat with Paul.
Yeah.
Hi, Paul. This is
Hi.
Shweta, and I liked your concept. And I also see that whenever we see the things and it is not working according to us, or we feel the need of to improve that object. So even I get many ideas, but I don't understand how to implement it, because it is instantly not possible to directly go for the production. So how would you suggest me that, even like there are might be silly things, silly objects, but I feel that okay, we can design it better.
Mm-hmm.
uh, like for example, there are multiple things that day to day life we use. Even I saw the first object you have designed similar way. There are
Mm-hmm.
many objects which we use day to day life, but we are so habitual that people don't understand that okay, it can be designed better, it can be
Exactly. That
functional.
was my first
Yeah,
point. Habituation. That is
yeah,
what inhibits us. Yeah. True. You're very
yeah,
true. Very true.
exactly. So many things are there that even we start observing and we start uh, going into minor details, then we can
Mm-hmm.
understand that okay, there can be multiple things we can do it better. So
Right.
how would you suggest me to do that? Because uh, what constraint I feel is okay, ideas are there, but
Mm-hmm.
initially where I can execute or keep it those, so I can have some later on fundings, or share those
Yes.
ideas with
Right.
someone.
Okay. Okay. A very quick question to you. Are you from an industrial design background?
I'm from fine arts background.
Fine
I'm
arts background. Okay.
done masters in fine arts, as well as
Okay.
later on I have done the UI UX designer. So I
Okay.
have
Okay.
some artistic way to see the objects and
Right, absolutely. Now, why I asked you this question, because converting ideas into a product requires certain amount of industrial design skills.
Uh-huh.
right? So what I would recommend here is that, but on the contrary, since you are from an art background, I'm sure you're very good at visualizing your concepts, right?
Yes.
So what I would recommend you is that you should actually probably sketch out your ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and then the first thing which you should do is get an IP. If you feel that the idea is novel, you should register it with an IP lawyer,
Okay.
have your rights protected, and then you can contact designers like me to convert to convert those ideas into products. And because I'll tell you, even after you convert your idea into a product, that idea needs to go into an ecosystem of manufacturing companies who
True.
would then want to take up the idea to manufacture it, and then probably have a royalty basis payment or things like that. All those commercial activities will start coming up once you have the idea protected, and then you slowly approach it, making the idea converted into a reality.
Yeah, true. True. Sure, I'll do that and definitely willing to work with you in future.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you.
Thank, thank you very much. How do you think that disciplined and organized person, or this aspect of human being, like being disciplined and organized, or being lazy, can can bring out more innovation? Because I am lazy, or maybe I'm more organized, so I'm more tend to get things done so quickly. So my ideas or will run in that way. So how do you think that these aspects also are useful when innovation happens?
See, a lot of innovation happens. What happens is to bring an idea to reality, it is a teamwork. But most of the ideas are single-minded. Like it stems from a single mind,
Hmm.
right? And then we definitely need a team of people to actually manifest it. So if you are the originator, then the quality of your ideas would definitely depend on your personal characteristics.
True.
Like for example, out of all the 700 products which I've designed so far, I could clearly say that I believe in frugal resources, and that's why in most of my designs you will see I haven't added a single penny. I've tried to not add cost to the product yet give a high utility, because I
Mm-hmm.
personally believe in frugality. No, I'd like to utilize resources to the fullest and create something out of thin air. That's what I said. So definitely, your personal characteristics would reflect in the ideas which you're generating.
Mm.
And it doesn't matter whether you're lazy, you're hardworking, or whatever it is. If you evaluate your ideas with those three parameters which I said, then you definitely will have a good idea to work ahead and create an impact in society.
Yeah. And where we can see the all products you have designed?
Uh, paulstudio.in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you
sure.
so much,
Yeah, that
Paul.
was a great question and a very apt answer from Paul. Thank you so much, Paul.
Hi Sandeep, Rimi here. On the similar lines, I wanted to know, yeah, before you file an IP, how do you iterate your ideas? Because we have several ideas, so we have a big vignette of ideas, and then we converge them, and we pick one, and we want to formulate that into a product, or basically anything that we want to
Mhm.
invent.
Right, right.
What do you do in between these lines? How do you go about it?
Okay. I follow a three-step rule. Uh, I always evaluate the idea on three parameters. The first parameter is that will the user be delighted to experience the product idea, the product with this idea or the utility which I'm kind of thinking of. The first is the user. The second part is that will the manufacturer be comfortable to manufacture it easily? Is the design easily manufacturable? Is the idea easily manufacturable? Because the ease of manufacturing also, to a certain extent, governs the success of a product. If you have an idea which cannot be scaled up or mass produced, then there are chances that it will get shot down after a couple of trials, right? And the third is that how about the economics of the idea? What is the business potential of the idea? Does it have something really very unique which can draw the attention of the user or the buyer? So if you evaluate your ideas basis these three parameters, I think you will clearly find which of your ideas are worth taking ahead.
Thanks. Great.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, sure. I think I got a. I definitely know where you're coming from that perspective, and I know it's really challenging for all of us. All of the designers have several ideas in our day-to-day lives. We see it from a problem-solving eye, and we always want to go ahead and implement this. I think, yeah, your 3 points are definitely a lookout for, everyone in this call to, go from ideas to products, or probably even innovating anything around us.
True, true.
Yeah, in continuation with the question that came up, as designers, we get ideas about some improvement in product or a totally new product, or like Elizabeth had mentioned in the evening, like architectural innovation, where she says that it's like a higher, probably kind of like a version of an existing product. How do we take care of the IP in such cases, Paul? Um, where does it originate, and how does the initiator, if I can call that person that way, that the designer who comes up with that idea, how does that work?
Well, in architecture, there is the concept of IP actually. You can take a inspiration and exactly rip off the design in architecture.
Yeah, not just architecture, even in a product, for example.
Yeah, in a product, what happens is that there's a search which has to be done before you apply for the patent. So there's a very I would say robust regime for the IP in the Indian IP regime. It's very robust, and the first step is actually to do a research of what are the existing platforms and what are the solutions which are there in that space. Because recently I had applied for a patent during the COVID. I didn't show that product. It was triggered by the mass migration. The idea was triggered due to mass migration. I had come up with an idea, and I had shot a mail to my attorney and said that figure out whether we could apply for a patent. And then she did the basic research and came back to me that saying, yes, Paul, we can apply for a patent because nobody else has thought of this idea before. Ground research is done. So then only you apply for a provisional patent, and then you've got 1 year's time to actually detail out the product, and then finally you can apply for the patent, and then it takes time to actually the patent is granted till the patent is granted.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
fine. So if you have great ideas, innovations, we know the go-to person now. I'm sure we can, with Paul's permission, if we can share his contacts, like an email ID or something, if people can connect with you regarding their ideas, and you can guide them through,
Surely,
various stages, how to go about it. That would.
surely. I'll just share the contact details in the last page. So if you want, you can just take a note of it. You can take a note of my website or the email or the contact details.
Oh, great.
Sandeep, Robert here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
can you maybe name some of your most favorite product design, like designed by someone else or like in the
Yeah.
market? Yeah.
No, but in what context? In what context? Because there are several well-designed products. There are
Can be
very
anything.
many
It can
well-designed.
be household item. It can be appliances. It can be automotive. Anything like maybe
See,
the
okay. That's a very interesting question. Probably I'm getting a bit nostalgic on this because there was a product which actually triggered my thought that I should become a product designer.
okay. That's
Wow.
interesting.
I think, and that is a paperclip.
Paperclip.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
Okay.
if you look at it, it's a simple wire with no utility, but the way you have turned it into a U-clip, it has so much of utility.
True. True. True.
And I think that's one of the classic products, and which actually triggered the thought in me that how simple product can be created out of thin air.
Hmm. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I have one more thing to ask. Like, uh, how do you think that people are turning into, means specifically in India, that how people are turning into most in means they are liking minimalistic design? Uh, because I have seen Indian mentality is little different, but of course, youth are accepting the minimalistic things more than the middle age or older people. So, how do you think that they are accepting and these things quickly or?
Okay. Okay. See, when we talk about minimalism, I'm not talking about aesthetic minimalism. I'm talking about the core utility being to the point so that when you pick up a product, you really identify that, okay, this is the purpose of the product, right? There are many products out in the market also which have superfluous extensions. When look at it, it really confuses you how to you use it. So when I'm talking about minimalism, I'm not talking about the aesthetic minimalism. I'm talking about the core utility of a product. And for that, I think there is no age barrier. It's no youth or the middle aged or the old. In fact, I would say the older people are more looking forward to simpler designs, and that gives an interesting thought that most of the cell phones today, if you look at if I talk about my grandfather, he really struggles with the touch phones and all of that. So I would say he is wanting more minimalistic utility. So most of the designs are not meant for ease of use. They're mostly, as I said, it's not human centric, it's more consumer centric. It's more to allure you to buy it rather than how comfortable it is for you to use it.
Yeah, agree, totally agree.
Yeah, on these lines, do you, envision things going backwards? I mean, for example, talking about the smartphone, right? We have so many features now, and like our parents or grandparents, they're like overwhelmed. I mean, even
Yes.
for normal users, things get
Yes.
overwhelming with all the features that's been added and loaded.
Yes.
So, do you envision as a product engineer,
Mhm.
um, kind of like things going the reverse direction, or products being,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
any thoughts about
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure things are going to move that way because now we've reached a peak of information overload, and people are talking about a digital detox and stuff like that. People are going out of social media, and because they're looking at a digital detox. So I'm sure the product space would also is calling for a digital detox.
it? Absolutely, yeah.
So I think that is definitely going to happen. It's a cyclic thing. It's a cyclic thing. It happens because now we've reached the peak. And one more interesting thing is that what good thing I would say the pandemic has done is people have become more empathetic. Now you know what's the pain of washing your utensils. Now you know what's the pain of swapping and cleaning the floor, right? Earlier you boasted of having a 3,000 square feet house, but now that 3,000 square feet house you have to clean it.
Yeah.
So people are becoming more empathetic. They understand they help us, their maids, how they were actually kind of in the situation of taking care of you. So when I wash my utensils, now I think if the detergents companies focus more on the quality of the detergent and not on the packaging, it'll probably save my hands.
Absolutely.
So I think these kind of thoughts are coming across and people are experiencing life in a different manner during the pandemic, and I think a lot of changes are going to be seen in the product space as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in fact, in a similar line, the other day I was cutting onions, so I was thinking, like, when they sell glasses, why can't they put an additional feature where if you cut onion, you won't get tears? So that would be
Absolutely.
interesting.
Absolutely, why not?
So that's in a pandemic's effect.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. We are experiencing more things about life which we had cut down on, and I think this is the positive aspect of the pandemic. That's how I look at it.
Seems like the only people who are enjoying the pandemic are the usability people.
They're appreciating it more now. I think they are appreciating the
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. True, true. I agree. I agree.
So lots of things we learn from this pandemic, and we try to try to independent ourselves in this particular pandemic situation. So yeah, that's in the main same context we can say like this way, so we can understand
True.
more empathy on the thing.
Yeah, means the perspective of seeing things have been changed due to this pandemic. That is, the situations are similar, but the way we are seeing things have changed. That's why we are noticing that's a detergent thing or the very small things that we do not noticed earlier, but we
Yes,
are
yes.
noticing it's right now. That's the thing that has changed, and I think it will go on, and we will. That's you designed that plug, which was a very minimalistic design, but it was the usability factor was quite extensive, and to see things very closely really plays a lot of.
True, true, true.
Absolutely. I mean, the title of your speech was correctly, made, familiar surprises. Yeah, it's so familiar. We see it like every day, multiple number of times, but yet small changes in them make a huge amount of difference. That was a wonderful takeaway, Paul. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
sure
Thank you
all
so
of
much.
us took a lot of
Thank
information from your presentation. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you
Can
so
I
much. And it was really nice to interact with all of you. I'm really glad, really happy to see all of you together.